Hello. We are live. This is our little corner of the internet, the Sprint Ride Option podcast, part of the Blue Wire Hustle Network. My name is Andrew Pasquini. You know that. To my right, Jason Aponte. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Got to watch Justin Fields eviscerate air, and it makes so many people upset. Just imagine not enjoying what you saw today. It's just a pro day. Shut up.
It's 2 day. It's two guys just throwing a football in a park. That's really all it is.
Two pros.
As you can see, we got some guests. Continuing the hot streak of just amazing guests. We got Jordan. We got Brad. They do a podcast together. They and two of the smartest football minds I know, and I think we intentionally picked them for this episode specifically. So before I dive into the episode, how are you guys doing today?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking, Andrew. I appreciate you guys having me on to go through this mock draft. I'm excited because Jordan and I do this stuff all the time. So we're ready. We're ready for this.
I am fantastic. It is a pleasure to be on the flagship podcast of the San Francisco 49ers. It is I can't believe I'm here, dude. I might text my mom in the middle of the show and tell her I finally made it after all these years.
Jordan, what is it? Hustle until your idols become your rivals?
Exactly. That's exactly what I feel like right now. Except we're not rivals. This is a family.
We're not rivals.
Family. Yeah.
This is a family show.
And I don't
us versus
eat my brothers. I eat my brothers.
Hey, listen, all I know is the three of us, we missed the dress code memo because Jordan is showing out today. I feel bad for the audio listeners today because they're missing this, and we might need to post a picture afterwards of all of us just so people can see just the drip. Like Kyle Shanahan wishes he could dress like Jordan is right now.
Let me just throw this out there real quick, okay? And this is no disrespect to the man himself because he's very good at what he does, but Todd McShay is no spring chicken anymore. The guy's kind of getting up there, and maybe the way ESPN's looking at it, they'd like to get some young talent on a rookie contract coming in and paying McShay the big bucks. So, hey, I just thought I'd come in here. We're talking pro days. This is kind of like my pro day for ESPN. Should they decide that, McShay's time is kind of running out? He's a pricey veteran. Come get the young gun and, let's make it happen. So.
Oh, my goodness.
This has gotten off to an amazing start. Exactly what I thought, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, if we just call it here, I think we're good. 3 minutes, just a solid 3 minutes. We're good. So I don't know what I haven't seen the title because usually I go to Twitter and retweet. I'm assuming this is something along the lines of mock draft, right?
Mock draft Monday on a Wednesday.
Mock draft Monday on a Wednesday. It's like the special edition of Thursday Night Football on Saturday. When Fox has the Saturday games, it's Thursday Night Football here on Saturday night. It's that's weird. Just call it Saturday Night Football. I don't think it's that hard. But yeah, so we're gonna go through the first round. I'm sure there's going to be teams we're more interested in talking about. I just checked now and I'm like, oh my God, dude. I hope my tabs, my pre-save tabs aren't really weird. I just look, I'm like, okay, we're good. So how do we want to decide who has the first pick? So we're essentially going to have Brad and Jordan rotate. I'm sure, some of these picks will be easier to talk about. I'm sure we're going to dive into on the 49ers pick. Jason, I'll let you decide who has the first pick in the 2021 Mock Draft Monday Wednesday.
All right. Just because this is his pro day today, we're going to start with Jordan. No disrespect, Brad, but we got to get the guy in front, real quick and get him some reps.
Give Jordan his shine. He deserves it.
Let's go.
So Jordan, you will have the odd picks. So 1, 3, 5, those numbers. Brad, you will get the even picks. So you'll start with the Jets. So we're gonna try and do this mock draft. And before we start, what number mock draft is this for you guys? I'm just curious, Brad. What number mock draft is this for you?
I gotta be inching up on the thousands at this point.
Oh my God!
It's what it feels like.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say if we're talking published, it's not it's much lower. But if we're just talking mocks in general, Brad's got a little jump on me, but I'm triple digits for sure. I'm probably 400 or 500 at this point.
But Brad, and you tried to shame me for being in 57 fantasy leagues or something like that. You're talking about doing thousands of mocks.
That's different.
Yeah,
let's be
honest. That's how we spend our free time here over here.
So, first question: what did you guys think of my mock draft? I drafted Justin Fields at 3, and then traded all of the 2021 picks to get up to 4 for Kyle Pitts. I think that was a good one.
Woo, that's spicy.
I don't hate it. Like I kind of like it. I mean,
I may have had to take user control of the Falcons to be able to make that trade, but we don't need to say that.
Hey, they'd be better in your hands than the hands they're currently in. So
I like that. As quarterback or GM? Because I had a pro day, but we don't need to talk about that. Jordan, as usual, you're on the clock. The Jacksonville Jaguars. They are making a pick. Who is it and why?
All right, so I think that there's a strong case to be made for any of the top 3 for me, which are Fields, Wilson, or Lawrence. But it has to be Trevor Lawrence, and it's for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a guy that there's such a consensus on that a team like the Jaguars, they can take that pick, they can use that number 1 pick, and they can, swing and miss on him, and nobody's really going to hold it against him. They'll kind of be like, oh, well, who could have seen this coming? Like, this guy's been touted as the number 1 prospect for 4.5 years now. So you get some kind of security with that. And then the second thing is I just think that he skill-wise, he's justified the number 1 pick. It's not like it's so, just based on consensus that you have to do it. There's a reason why that consensus is so strong. Yeah. He has the tools. He has the arm. I think the biggest red flag really with Trevor Lawrence is that he was so good as a freshman during his first season that people just expected him to get better. And I think he improved in a lot of areas. But it's really hard to consistently exceed expectations when your expectations are so high based on how you played right out of the gate. So I think that if you look at it as just career in a kind of objective viewpoint without all the expectations of being Trevor Lawrence, he's a no-brainer number 1 pick. But there are some concerns. People think that he never really improved the way they would have liked. Again, I think it just comes back to the guy is very talented. And it's a situation where as much as you want to bank everything on talent, there is a public relations side to football. And it's really easy to swing and miss on Trevor Lawrence versus if you try to get cute with it and you really like Justin Fields or you really like Zach Wilson. And one of those guys doesn't pan out and then Trevor Lawrence goes and becomes a superstar a lot of people think he can be. As a small market franchise like Jacksonville, you really can't take the chance on something like that. So you lock in Trevor Lawrence, you feel really good about it. And he's a marketable guy too. They had a great run with Gardner Minshew. But I think that they're going to get a little bit more bang for their buck with the Trevor Lawrence type player, merchandise, all that kind of stuff.
So Jordan, do you have any? I'm sorry. Do you have any character concerns with? I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. I don't really care about Super Bowls. Are those red flags? It doesn't seem like he wants it, Jordan. I don't know, man. It's odd to hear those things.
Would Trevor Lawrence have shown up for the Sprint Ride Option podcast with a shirt and a tie on?
Probably
then
not.
I would say he's out.
I would say out.
I'm not sure that he would have.
All right. So I am going to lock Jordan, is Trevor Lawrence here? I'm going to go who wants to be a millionaire. Is Trevor Lawrence your final answer?
Lock it in.
Lock it in. The Jacksonville Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence. Congratulations to Jacksonville. Brad, Robert Saleh's first ever draft pick. Who will the New York Jets take it to?
I mean, I honestly think in real life, this could be a situation where it might not be as cut as dry as we all think it is. Obviously, as it's been discussed up until this point, it's basically Zach Wilson, which I believe is the case. But with Justin Fields and how he's been performing and what he did last year as well, there's a case for him to be the number 2 pick here with the Jets. But because of the natural arm talent that Wilson possesses, Jordan and I talk about this all the time. He's definitely, at least in my opinion, the best natural thrower of the football in this class.
Okay.
I can make the argument he might be the best natural thrower of the football in the last decade. His right arm is extremely special. And I think based on kind of some of the things that Jordan touched on and some of the PR narratives and things like that, I think Zach Wilson is perceived by the fan base as a safe pick, as well as the front office and the guys who are actually making these picks. So considering all the information that's been around and been out, understanding how talented Zach Wilson really is, I think it makes perfect sense for him to go number 2 and land with the Jets and see what LaFleur can get out of Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson is the pick. Jason, any thoughts on that? Or is that pretty? I feel like the first 2 picks are relatively locked in, so maybe not too many thoughts, but what would you think about that?
No, honestly, I mean, there is some, after. I mean, it shouldn't be like this because a pro day shouldn't swing you one way or another. That's why I find it so funny that people have such strong opinions on either side. Like the pro day shouldn't have put you on to Justin Fields, or the pro day shouldn't turn you off from him. All that stuff is already on film, but there is a case to be made, at least with the idea that maybe the Jets are enamored with Justin Fields, right? So there is a percentage of a chance. How likely? I don't think it's so likely. I think Zach Wilson is the pick as well too, just based off of everything that we've heard, fit, things like that. So, I agree with Zach. But, the Justin Fields thing, I could see that being a little bit more talked about it too, even if I don't think that's the pick.
All right. Jordan, I see the memes you send sometimes. I'm a little afraid that you get the 49ers here. So here we go. The Niners at 3. This is the pick everybody's here for. Jordan, who do Shanahan and Lynch pick?
I mean, you want to say Justin Fields and not think twice about it, but what kind of fun would that be? So let's just dive down this hypothetical.
Okay.
They like Trey Lance better than they like Justin Fields, and Atlanta really likes Justin Fields. Grew up in Georgia, very familiar with the area, very been around for a long time. I'm sure they've had tabs on him for a lot longer than the last couple of years. Hypothetically, could they work out a scenario where they really get Atlanta to cough back? You're not going to get back what you gave up entirely, but if they could get back maybe a third and maybe an additional first even, because it is such a valuable position, to move back literally one spot and get the guy they like anyway. It's something that you'd have to look at if they really like Lance better than Fields. However, this is my mock. This isn't John Lynch's mock, and I like Fields better. So I will be taking Justin Fields and feeling fantastic about it.
I'm just happy the words Mac Jones didn't come out of your mouth there. Not that I'm horribly against the idea. I've kind of sold myself more on the idea. I don't think it's gonna happen. So thank you, Jordan, for doing that. Jason, I'm sure you feel pretty good about this.
I feel Fields great, baby. It's so easy to just say that, honestly. Fields, and I mean, but yeah, I mean, today, look, all right, cool. 2 out of 10, that's cool. It's better than 0. I mean, honestly, the thing is, like I said, pro day shouldn't swing you one way or the other, but who the hell couldn't have watched those throws and been happy and been laughing about, like, oh my goodness, and been giddy, just the joyless people on the internet, man. Like, come on, man, get outside, enjoy life. I mean, do something, bro. Like, you can't just be that upset over people being happy over a pro day or someone that could be the 49ers quarterback. Like, grow up a little. Come on.
All right, Brad, you got the 4th pick. And in my mind, this is where the draft starts. Right. I think the Falcons can go one of multiple ways here. But Brad, as the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons for the next 2 minutes, who do the Atlanta Falcons go with?
Well, if I'm the general manager, I could be potentially looking to trade out of this pick and get a lot more compensation in return, potentially grab. I mean, the Falcons have Matt Ryan under contract. He is the quarterback there right now. So you could make that case to trade out, get some additional weapons, compensation to add around him and build around that offense. But I do kind of feel like there's a big possibility that they actually just stay put. And with a lot of the changes with the coaching staff and front office and what have you that have been happening, you could make the case that they are maybe potentially going in a completely new direction. And if that's the case, and maybe they want to hedge their bet with Matt Ryan and want to hold on to him for a year, well, what have we heard about Trey Lance? There's a lot of conversation about him being a developmental guy, being a guy who would benefit from sitting behind a veteran as he enters the NFL in year 1, coming out of North Dakota State. But regardless of that, I think Trey Lance would fit from a scheme perspective. He would be able to operate the offense day 1. And again, he would be able to learn and get some valuable insight from a quarterback like Matt Ryan, and sit behind him. So I really think with all the different intangibles and traits that Trey Lance brings to the table, powerful arm, he's a very cerebral guy, is able to handle a lot of responsibility at the line of scrimmage, pre and post snap. So I kind of like the idea of Trey Lance going right there to the Falcons. I think the value is too good to pass up, and there is a great opportunity to put Trey kind of on ice for maybe half a year, and let him learn from a veteran like Matt Ryan.
So Trey Lance is the pick. So we're 4 for 4 on quarterbacks, which I don't know. I don't know draft history well enough. I feel like that would be a first, right?
I think it is.
Yeah, that'd be a first.
So there you go. 4 quarterbacks off the board. Jordan, how are you going to help Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, a team the Niners will play this year because of the 17th game of the season? Jordan, you're on the clock with the Cincinnati Bengals.
So the biggest debate in Cincinnati, because a lot of people are assuming it will be quarterback 1 through 4, right now is centered around Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase, who are both pretty much the consensus number 1 tackle, number 1 receiver. And it's an interesting debate Brad and I have actually had before on a pod, where you have to really look at, do you value getting a receiver that's going to get open quicker and is going to beat NFL coverage more frequently, or do you value the tackle that might give you an extra second, half a second of time in the pocket to find a guy to get an average receiver that might take a little longer to get open? For me, I lean more towards the receiving weapon personally, and here's why. I think that Cincinnati's biggest problem actually isn't on the edge. It's on the interior. It's at both guard spots and center. And as much as adding Penei Sewell would really shore up the outside, I think Jonah Williams has been more than fine. And I think that you're in a spot where you don't really need to force the offensive line pick because, again, the issue mainly is within the interior spots, not in the outside. So then what it comes down to me is it Jamar Chase or is it Kyle Pitts? In a vacuum, I would take Pitts just because he's kind of this freak athlete. That's this, people call him a unicorn. They throw all these adjectives out there to describe really what seems like a once-in-a-generation player. Mm-hmm. Taking a tight end early is generally not a good idea. However, the thing that really stands out, and it's Mike Renner from PFF has reiterated a bunch of times, if you're able to beat man coverage as a tight end, it takes away that stigma of being that early round tight end. Like if you're able to go out on an island and beat a safety, beat a really good slot corner, somebody like that over and over again, it doesn't really matter that you're a tight end. You end up getting classified as that offensive weapon. So I would want to lean Pitts, but this is for the Bengals specifically. When you have to look at when you're the Bengals, is Zach Taylor's the coach still. And Zach Taylor comes from that McVay-Shanahan coaching tree, but specifically under McVay, they run a lot of 11 personnel, which is going to be 1 running back, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and they really don't use the tight end too much outside of blocking. We saw Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee, who are both, serviceable to above average tight ends, and they really don't get featured all that often, but the 3 wide receivers are constantly eating. So in Cincinnati, you already have Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, who are great wide receivers. If you added Jamar Chase, who had an all-time season at the age of 19, has familiarity with Joe Burrow, you're doing 2 things. You're, 1, setting the team up for success with the scheme that your coach probably wants to run, that the system he came from had the most success with, and creating a dynamic offense that's going to have 3 viable receiving options. And then 2, as the Cincinnati Bengals, who are a team that hasn't really been great at retaining talent, and no offense to Cincinnati, it's not really a place where you're going to bring in a lot of marquee free agents. You're making your franchise quarterback very happy and giving him an enticing reason to want to be there for a long period of time by showing him, hey, we're here to help you out. We're going to go get your guy that you lit up college football world with in 2019. So for me, it's Jamar Chase. It's very tough between those 3, but I think Jamar Chase just makes the most sense.
Jason, what are your thoughts there with Chase going 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point about Jonah Williams because, he got hurt last year, didn't play it down, and they invested in the offensive line last year as well, too. So that's a really good point. And I really like the idea of connecting Burrow and Chase again, as well, too. So, I mean, yeah, I don't really have an issue with this. I know that a lot of people would want to lean Sewell here, but I think Jordan brings up a really good point about getting open and things like that. And a lot of those throws are quick throws. So that has to be, it's all quick because it's all part of the Shanahan, McVay tree and everything as well too. Burrow can go downfield, but we know that if he does have any deficiencies, it's really about his throwing arm, as far as distance. So they're going to be keeping everything in those short intermediate range. And if a guy can get open, then you can get the ball out quicker and negate any sort of pass rush. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. I know that people would want Sewell there, but I mean, I really agree with Jordan's logic here.
Brad, you got the 6th pick with the Dolphins. Are you going to use the same logic as Jordan with the Bengals going LSU receiver? Are we going to get Tua, Bama guy to throw to, or where are the Dolphins
get him
going?
Some weapons? Should we? I might, maybe, but no, I'm not. I'm going to have to lean back on being an offensive lineman, and I truly believe in, and which is building from the trenches out, and especially when you have a young quarterback in Tua, who is already there, and based on some of the moves that the Dolphins have made, some of the things that they've stated, to me, it seems like they're moving forward with Tua. So if that's the case, and understanding how many picks they have in this draft, they'll be able to find weapons later. I think right now is a perfect opportunity to go out and get that elite offensive lineman. And so I think that's where I'm headed. And I think a lot of people might think I would be picking Sewell here, but I'm not. I'm picking Rashawn Slater, who's my number one offensive lineman in this class for many reasons. He's scheme diverse. He's position diverse. He can play tackle, guard, and I guarantee you could throw him at center and he could even be serviceable there. My biggest issues with Sewell, while he does have some of that nastiness that you like in the run game, dude's a pancake machine. However, he lacks a little bit in pass protection. So with the young quarterback, having Tua on the roster, I want to ensure that my guy is standing up straight, has the time to read defenses, make his keys, make his reads, do all that kind of stuff. So that is why I'm going Rashawn Slater. Rashawn Slater is the most technically gifted offensive lineman in this class. I say this all the time. I'm always going to pick the technician over the power every single time because technician can outwork power many times more often than not. So with me, I'm going Rashawn Slater. Again, he can play every position on the offensive line. He brings a completely technically sound skill set with him that will be able to keep Tua Tagovailoa clean as long as possible. So that's really where I think they should go and kick the options for weapons down the line a bit.
Jason, where do you fall on the Slater-Sewell conversation? Which side would you go first?
So it's funny because, from the outside looking in, everybody just has Sewell pegged, right? As the number one guy. We had Guy Haberman on and he was like, man, I thought that guy was a tight end until he ran up and he got closer and he looks like a lineman and everything as well too. But I think that there is a lot of talk around this. And I agree with Brad about Slater being the better lineman, right? Sewell has the cachet of being in Oregon, right? And I think that sometimes that kind of pushes people's draft stock up. So I don't have a problem with this, especially when you pop on the tape and you see that Slater is actually a technician, like Brad's saying as well too. So, it happens all the time with certain positions during the draft. One guy is pegged for number one, but he doesn't end up being the number one guy. And sometimes you look like, like last year, right? The Giants took Andrew Thomas, right? Mm-hmm. Look who you could have had. You could have had Wirfs, you could have had Wills. So again, I like this pick too as well. I don't really have anything negative to say about it because Slater is that good, honestly. And really, realistically, you really can't go wrong with either of them. But if you're talking about probably who has the edge right now, it's probably Slater.
Jordan, for the Detroit Lions, are you going to get Jared Goff some help? Or are you going to find a guy that Dan Campbell likes and bite some knees off?
So, you and I are just reading minds right now because this could not have worked out better for Detroit. And I see Jason. I'm sorry, I am going to do it to Kyle Pitts. You are on the first flight to Detroit. So here's the way I'm looking at it. Best player left on the board. Last time they had a freak. I'm not comparing to this, but I'm just saying the last time they had a freak unicorn athlete, it worked out pretty well for him. His name is Calvin Johnson. You might remember him. If they get a guy like that, you pair him with TJ Hawkinson. You have your inline traditional tight end TJ Hawkinson. You have Pitts who can then line up in the slot. You can put him out wide. You can line him up inline as well. And ultimately, what is Dan Campbell? What did he just do in New Orleans before he came? He's a tight ends coach. Is Kyle Pitts a knee biter? I'm not sure. Detroit's going to have to do the due diligence on that. I can't speak on that. However, getting the stud tight end to then create a duo that, in my opinion, would almost immediately become the best tight end group in the league between Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts, you're not only setting Jared Goff up for success right away, which is a Cal guy. I'd love to see him revitalize his career, but then you're setting yourself up. You have all these draft picks the next couple of years. If you take a guy in the next class, if you take a guy in 2 years out from now, whatever your plans are for this long-term rebuild, you have two very good, very talented young tight ends. And Kyle Pitts, again, isn't pigeonholed into that tight end role, but just having both those guys to, kind of play chess with against other defenses, it's a no-brainer to me. And then, again, with the tight end coach, guy who bites knees, it's a dream scenario. They have to do it.
Jason, Jordan can't answer me on if Kyle Pitts bites knees. Can you answer me? Do you think Kyle Pitts is a guy who can pick up Thor's hammer?
Probably. I mean, what else can he do at this point? I mean, when you hear words about greatest tight end prospect of all time, how could he not? It's really a matter about picking up the hammer, whether your heart is pure. That's the part that I'm trying to evaluate a little bit more with Kyle Pitts. Like Brad said, integrity is the hardest thing to scout. Can he pick up Thor's hammer? I still haven't gotten there in my evaluation process, but I'm still working on it, honestly. But that is a Brad Campbell. What is
Brian,
it? Like he needs that. What is it? Dan Campbell. Brad Campbell. Sorry, Dan Campbell. That is one of those Dan Campbell whatever cliches. Pick up Thor's hammer, bite knees. He's all over the place. So,
Brad, I don't know if Matt Rule has made any weird cliches that NFL coaches like to make, but where do the Carolina Panthers go at 8?
I don't know about any weird cliches either. However, I do know he's a very cerebral coach. I think he's very in tune with his emotional intelligence and being able to scout integrity. Actually, Jason was one of the ones who pulled a clip from one of his interviews at the Senior Bowl that really spoke to that and how he really puts that in high regard. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go with a high character guy here.
Here we go.
It's not Mayo Mac. We're not going.
Oh, damn it.
So I think they could, but again, we were in Mobile. We have our feelings about what we saw with not Sam Darnold, but Mac Jones. I don't feel like that's the route they go here. They traded the compensation to go Sam Darnold. So I think now is an opportunity to potentially continue to stack weapons and make a situation as good as possible for Sam Darnold to thrive and succeed, because as we know with Adam Gase in New York, it was seemingly the opposite. He was lacking weapons. He was lacking a ton of things. And with Matt Rule being an offensive-minded guy and really kind of orchestrating this whole offseason and getting Sam Darnold, I kind of want to go wide receiver here. Curtis Samuel left. He's now with the Washington football team. So now the wide receiver 3 spot opens up. They currently have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson's getting up in age. He's getting there. He's 20, I think 27, maybe coming up on 28. So that's getting to those, scary hours for the age of the wide receiver. So at this point, I'm going to have to just go ahead and go with the number 1 wide receiver on my board who I have, and that's going to be Jamar Chase. And I'm just going to slot him in and give Sam Darnold, Jamar Chase to go with Christian McCaffrey. He went at 5. Woo! So then we're going to pivot, and then we're going to go O-line and get my guy the protection he needs, and we're going to go Sewell, because then that makes that really easy. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. If Jamar Chase was on the board, that's all the right reasons why they would go get him. I love that idea. Penei Sewell, hey, that's okay. Penei Sewell's a good pick here. You got to protect Sam Darnold. Jason, what do you think here?
I think that Brad tried to steal Andrew's draft strategy of
it's not a bad try.
So bring the card up and just say the 49ers draft Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech, and everybody just looks around like, what in God's name are you talking about?
If he says it's legally binding, that's my view on it. Yeah. So
exactly.
No, honestly though, that actually just makes a bunch of sense. I was kind of waiting for you to do the Mac thing, but you're right about Darnold. If you've already invested what you invested and you've picked up his 5th-year option, it's clear that you're going to do the 2-year thing with him as well. And the only way to really properly evaluate him is to get him the protection that he needs. So Sewell makes a ton of sense there. The only thing that I had a concern with Mac was they run that spread offense, and I don't know if that's him. Is that really Mac's thing? Like it is Justin Fields. Like I can see Justin Fields. I'm not trying to speak this into existence. I can see Justin Fields going over there and tearing it up, with those weapons and that sort of offense and those guys over there. So that's the thing is I've seen people talking about it, but I think the Sam Darnold thing takes them completely out of it, I think.
Jordan, Denver at 9. I don't see any really tall quarterbacks available right now. Do you
is it time, Jordan?
Or who do the Broncos go with at 9?
It's time, Jordan.
It is time, because the Broncos are in a position where they've actually assembled a really nice group of skill position players. I really like KJ Hamler. I think he's due for a big step. I admittedly wasn't the highest on Jerry Jeudy, but the guy can run routes. He can get open. Noah Fant is a phenomenal tight end. Cortland Sutton coming off that torn ACL. Like, you look at that group, they're a dominant group of skill position players. The issue is that Drew Lock just isn't very good, in my opinion. And it pains me because I don't know if people remember his rookie year when he was on the sideline, busting out put on by Jeezy on the sideline. I was like, I want this man to succeed. When I saw that immediately, I was like, I hope this man goes straight to Canton. Unfortunately, there isn't a Hall of Fame for lip syncing Jeezy on the sideline. You have to actually play football, and he's just not very good at it. So the Broncos are in a position where they need to get a guy who doesn't need to be a phenomenal athlete. They don't need to be, a Patrick Mahomes or a Herbert who they're going to play in the division twice a year. They just need a guy who's going to be competent enough to get the ball in the hands of these guys who have proven that they can be playmakers. So you may not be as thrilled about it. You're definitely not going to be as thrilled about it as you would be getting Fields or Lance, one of these crazy athletic guys. But you take Mac Jones, you get a guy who has proven to be accurate, he's proven to have pocket presence, and I think just immediately would be an upgrade over Drew Lock in that current situation they find themselves in now, where they're committed to him, but they're not. They won't say they want to get rid of him, but they're also not really publicly supporting him. I will throw out there too, I've been saying for a couple weeks that I think that they're one of the only teams left that would be a potential fit for Jimmy if the Niners were to move Jimmy Garoppolo to another team. So maybe they pivot to another spot, but this is hypothetically, that hasn't happened yet. So I would take Mac Jones here, and I'd feel pretty good about it if I was them. Better than I would be if I was going into the year with Drew Lock.
Mac Jones off the board. So that's 4 quarterbacks, top 9. Something interesting I've noticed too, Jason, is all offensive players. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but when you look at team needs and things like that, around the board, when you see the Trey Lance pick at 4, it makes sense. They're running the Shanahan offense with Arthur Smith and all those things. This is all lining up, honestly, at this point. I think when you get to the next pick is when we have to start talking about defensive players. And I think that, look, I see Brad nodding, so that's kind of the good segue.
That is the segue. Brad, do the Cowboys address the defense, or does Jerry Jones just add another offensive weapon because he likes?
No, I think at this point the Cowboys understand. You get Dak Prescott back, the offense gets back to normal, gets working again. They have the offensive line as of right now that can help, and they can always address that later on down in the draft. So I think it is appropriate to go to the defensive side, specifically the secondary. The secondary for the Cowboys has been a little bit leaky, for a lack of a better term, and I think they could use a lot of help in that regard. They did go to the well at Alabama and select Trayvon Diggs in the second round. They could go back. You got Patrick Surtain there, but I honestly, with how I kind of see him pairing with Trayvon Diggs, I kind of like J.C. Horn going here, and I'm gonna, I've been quick to have my concerns about J.C. Horn, but I think he fits with what the Cowboys are doing. The nastiness and grittiness that he brings to the table. I think the attitude, a lot of that is what kind of the Dallas Cowboys need right now on defense. They need some of that nastiness. So he has the traits, he has the tools to go and be a good press man corner in the NFL. And I think having him across from Trayvon Diggs would really benefit the defense as a whole.
Jordan, you have the New York Giants. Do they get a weapon for Daniel Jones, or where do they go?
I mean, that's pretty much all they have to. There's nobody that I'm looking at that's a defensive prospect that's so good that I'm like, hey, I need this guy. It's going to make the team that much better. I think they're actually in a really good spot, actually, on defense. We saw last year they went into a hostile environment in Seattle. They beat a really good team with a really good offense, and they just shut them down. I think they have the potential to be an above average. I don't think they're going to be a top 5, top 10, but they have the potential to be a top 15 defense. They need to figure out this year if Daniel Jones is going to be a guy that they're going to feel comfortable giving a second contract to. So for me, it has to be a weapon, and it has to be a guy that's just going to separate from the pack entirely. I think that it's Jalen Waddle at this point. I just think that his area quickness, his ability with the ball in his hands after you can get him the ball at any level of the field, short, intermediate, deep, and the guy's going to make plays. His quick twitch is insane. I think people get kind of caught up in thinking that he's just a straight line speed guy. Straight line speed's nice, but his short area quickness is what really gets me. Great hits, great fluidity. He was on pace to have pretty much the same season that Devonta Smith had this year before he got hurt. That takes nothing away from Devonta Smith. I'm just saying, it's just, people get like, well, Smith put up all these numbers. Waddle was right there with him until he got hurt, and I think that ankle injury isn't something that's going to linger for a long time. So give me the guy that is going to really let us find out if Daniel Jones is our guy moving forward or not. And even if you get Waddle and Jones isn't the guy, then the next guy coming in is going to have a good group of receivers to throw the ball to between Galladay, Darius Slayton, and then Jalen Waddle, of course.
Perfect. So now we are at the 49ers original pick. The Eagles did some shenanigans. They traded back. The Dolphins at 6. Brad, where do the Philadelphia Eagles go?
So I think with Jalen Hurts being QB1 as of right now heading into the season, the top 5 quarterbacks have gone off the board. So there's no flirting with a potential Mac Jones or that type of situation. You look at the wide receiver core. you look at who's currently there. I mean, you have Greg Ward. I believe he's like a former quarterback. He's playing wide receiver now. You have Travis Fulgham, Jalen Reagor, first-round pick last year, but was often injured, didn't really make the impact that you wanted to see. He is a smaller type, shiftier wide receiver. And then you have JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who's just basically a bust at this point. So I think you have to get Jalen Hurts some weapons. And so I think there's a perfect opportunity to see back-to-back Alabama wide receivers go off the board. And they get Devontae Smith. And they have a wide receiver who's already familiar with the quarterback. And again, you've seen the numbers. The Heisman says everything you need to know about the numbers. But I think from a skill set perspective, Devontae Smith is a really good wide receiver. I think he knows how to win his way. And say what you want about some of the traits or lack of measurables or whatever. I think he knows how to come in and win exactly how he needs to win. Kind of gives me some Keenan Allen vibes. So I really like Devontae Smith going to the Eagles.
Jason, not necessarily where do you think they land, but do you like this order for the two Alabama receivers, Waddle and Smith, or do you think Smith goes before Waddle?
So that's what I was going to bring up, and I was going to ask Jordan, but I'm glad that you waited for both these picks to come off. So, Gettleman's talked a lot about Devontae Smith, a ton about him. And that's the only thing. I mean, again, this is smoke season. We don't know what's going on, but I kind of feel like that's where they would lean with that pick. Not that I disagree with Jordan in any way that he said, about what he said, honestly, because it is true about, Waddle being almost forgotten, right? Because Devontae Smith wins the Heisman and you forget how good Waddle was. But I think it's either one of those two, and I think Jordan nailed it on the head. It's about evaluating Daniel Jones, and man, if you don't have him and he can't work, next year you get Golladay, you get Slayton, you get Sterling Shepard, you get either of these two guys, and then you get a chance to set somebody else up for it. But I thought it was interesting that Devontae and Waddle. I mean, if you were asking me, I would have probably given Devontae to the Giants just based off of what Gettleman's been saying. Doesn't mean that that's the pick, but I could certainly see the rationale behind moving Waddle and then having Smith there. So, I mean, they're interchangeable in my mind because I think they're both going to be great players. But, I don't have so much of a problem with it as much as it's just a good conversation because of how much smoke is around Devontae Smith with Gettleman talking about him.
Jordan, we're going down to LA for this pick. Where do the Chargers go? A good little season, from Herbert. How do they help him out?
I'd like to look at and get some weapons for him, but I just think the receivers that I'd feel comfortable taking here are off the board already. I think that they have some need on the defensive side of the ball, mainly at corner, and that's why for me it's pretty much a no-brainer. I'd run to the podium with this pick. I'd take Patrick Surtain. I wouldn't think twice about it. I think it would give them a very solidified core on defense where you have Bosa holding down the defensive line. You have Murray out of Oklahoma last year. He'll be in his second year holding down the linebacking core. And then you get a guy who's a forgotten player, who's literally one of my favorite players in the league, and I hope he comes back, stays healthy, and reminds everyone why he's so good, and Derwin James. And then all of a sudden you're looking at a team that has a defense that's very solid on all three levels. And again, when you're playing the Chiefs twice a year and you're competing with them for the division, any help you can get in pass defense against that explosive Chiefs offense is going to go a long way. So I'd take Patrick Surtain. I'd feel really good about it.
Wow.
I like that pick. I really agree with they need to address that defense, and I mean you got to go best available, especially with the needs they have. Minnesota at 14, Brad. I don't know, man. I feel like Minnesota can go a few places. I'm interested to see where you have them going.
Yeah, they definitely could, and Patrick Surtain was definitely someone that I had spinning around in my brain as a potential pick, especially with the unfortunate off-field situation that's followed Jeff Gladney. There is a potential that he doesn't even play next year based on some of the stuff that he got into, and he was a up-and-coming rookie who played pretty decent last year. So I feel like now there is a real opportunity for cornerback to be available, but I think as of right now, it'd be a little iffy to go Caleb Farley again. I think the back is enough to get him to drop out of the top 15. Greg Newsome, do we want to put him up here at this point? I would. I don't know if the NFL is there yet. So, but understanding again what we've talked about earlier, building from the trenches, Minnesota seemingly just cannot get their offensive line right. So I'm going to go ahead and stick there. and I'm going to go ahead and get them their Trent Williams. Now, he's not the same as Trent Williams, that he reminds me of Trent Williams, and I'm speaking of Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. I mean, even down to the swag. They got the same kind of big man swag. He's a really fluid athlete. Christian Darrisaw is. Now, I wouldn't say he has the most powerful, the most power what he brings with his hands, but he makes up for all of that with his technique, footwork, and speed. So I can live with that, especially from a tackle that I need to be able to keep Kirk Cousins upright, with that big old price tag that he carries. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick with Christian Darrisaw and try and get that offensive line right and allow Kirk Cousins some more time to get that thing out.
So Christian Darrisaw off the board at 14. Jordan, maybe a little overdressed to cosplay Bill Belichick. That's okay. Who you taking at 15 for the New England Patriots, Jordan?
So if you're the Patriots, you're rolling with Cam at this point. There's not unless you make that trade for Jimmy, maybe that's been room for a long time. But you're probably going to roll with Cam. There's no quarterbacks left on the board that I'd feel great about taking at 15. So who I'm looking at right now is Micah Parsons out of Penn State, and for a couple reasons. I think that just from an athletic profile, he's the best player that I would have left on the board. I know he has some off-the-field concerns, some character concerns, but if any team's going to be able to evaluate that and, kind of rein that in, I think New England's proven over the last couple of decades that they're more than capable of doing so. And the other thing you have to look at, while Parsons isn't the strongest player in coverage, his best abilities, in my opinion, is his ability as a blitzer, which is huge, and he's very stout against the run game. Just very solid, very sound, which isn't glamorous in this day and age where throwing the ball and then stopping the guy who throws the ball is the thing that gets the most attention. He's a very well-rounded football player. And then you have to look at the fact that one of their best players and one of their leaders over the last decade when they've gone on this dynastic run, and Donta Hightower, is approaching the age 32. I think he's 32 this year. He's going to turn 32 next year. He's in the last year of his current deal now. And Parsons is a guy that's gotten compared to him a lot from a skill standpoint and what they're able to do. So you get him in the building now. You have him work out maybe some of that immaturity that's been rumored to be floating around. And then you have him step in. You wish Hightower well. You let him walk. And you have a younger version of him come in and for the next 10 years hold down that defense the way that Hightower has for the last decade.
So Micah Parsons off the board. Jason, I'm going to go to you real quick as a sideline reporter, get your opinion. We kind of agreed no trade, just to kind of keep it straightforward and simplified. New England, do you see them staying at 15 or do you see them trading up to go get a quarterback?
Honestly, man, I think that if they see an opportunity to go get Mac, I think they're going to go ahead and do it. I just don't know where that is. I think they're going to try to see where the board lies, and I think that's also lending itself to why they were there at Justin Fields' pro day today. Could be to talk trade, could be to see if Justin Fields somehow falls to 4, then it's all systems go to try and move up to 4 and just push all your chips into the table. So I don't think they're going to stay at 15, but we're not going to do trades on here. So, I mean, you have to go, with what it is. So I don't think it's going to be 15. I have a feeling that they're going to try to make a play for whoever's left out of the 4, so out of the 5, right? Whoever's going to be the 5th one left, right? Because I think the first 4 are pretty locked in. And I don't know where Mac's going to end up. So if Mac ends up falling to where he does in Denver, don't expect New England to sit there and let that happen. Unless Brad has something, or you got something to add, or all right, look like you were putting your hand up. My bad.
Well, Brad, we're just going to go to you because you are now Cliff Kingsbury. Congratulations. You're hanging out with your staged backyard with the fire running on a nice 95-degree day in Arizona.
Your Bond villain lair.
The only other team in the NFC West to have a first-round pick. Who do the Arizona Cardinals go with?
So I think the Arizona Cardinals find themselves in a quite peculiar spot here because I think they really need cornerback help. Patrick Peterson is no longer there, but they also I think need edge help. Blanking on his name. Hassan Reddick is no longer on the team. He signed elsewhere in free agency. So I think it's a power struggle. It's because now you have Caleb Farley available as maybe the best cornerback on the board. He's hurt. I don't know. Again, I don't know if teams feel good enough to go ahead and select him this high, especially with the 4-month timetable that comes along with the injury. So again, I like Newsome a lot. Newsome could go here, but I don't know if I want to put him there. I'm finding myself having a really hard time decide who I want to pick, but I'm going to go ahead and do it.
You better not. I know what you're going to do. You better not.
Oh, no. I'm nervous now.
I'm not.
I'm doing it. I'm sorry, Jordan. this hurts me as much as it hurts you. It really does. It pains me in my soul, and I hope it just does. I just hope this doesn't happen in real life. But based on the needing help on the edge, you do bring in JJ Watt. He's probably going to play more on the interior, so you could put a nice speed rusher right there on the edge.
Are you going to say what I
think?
Go
across from Chandler Jones.
Oh,
the hive is buzzing, and not the good way. So we're going to go ahead and grab Azeez Ojulari right here. We're going to stick him across from Chandler Jones. Because if I'm Cliff Kingsbury and I want to keep that house that looks, the backdrop that's behind me, and I want to keep that, I need to make sure that I'm continuing to generate pressure on quarterbacks, especially helping an inexperienced defensive back and secondary. And so Azeez gives me that. You put him next to JJ Watt, and then and then you get him with Chandler Jones. Man, that would be scary. I didn't like making it.
So we are halfway through. If you've joined us late, so far, Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, Chase, Slater, Pitts, Sewell, Jones, Horn, Waddle, Smith, Surtain, Darisaw, Parsons, and Ojulari. And Jordan, you're going to Vegas. Congratulations. Who do the Raiders take at 17?
The Raiders need help literally everywhere on defense, so you really can't. I mean, you can miss on the player, but you can't miss on the attempt to fill a position because they need help almost everywhere. I'm not super big on him, but at 17, I think the value is too good to pass up. So I would take Kwity Paye here, and then you have a guy that you can slot in that can be more of that early down guy that maybe you could find a role where you're kicking him inside when Ngakoue comes in, because I really don't see Ngakoue being this 3-down guy that's going to really stand in on early downs. You can let him thrive as a situational pass rusher. Then you have Crosby, Farrell, and Paye in a rotation on the edge. And all of a sudden you might be in a position where you're getting more pressure on the quarterback. The only other guy I'd look at here is maybe JOK out of Notre Dame. But I just think that the edge position you get a little bit more value out of it. It didn't make sense at the time. Still doesn't make sense to me now. I never understood the Cleveland Farrell thing, so I think you'd be in a position where it'd be better if he became a rotational guy, and he ultimately ends up being kind of that Solomon Thomas player that was Thomas for the Niners, where he was just this guy that he was there, he was working hard, he was producing, but he's never going to live up to that number 4 overall pick. So don't make the mistake of not addressing it just because you invested that capital. So kind of right the wrong there by taking Paye is basically what I'm saying.
Okay.
The Miami Dolphins, they got Slater with the 6th pick in the draft. Brad, I believe you had that pick. You talked about getting an offensive weapon maybe later in the draft. I see one on the board right now that is a position they need. They've struggled at the running back position. But do they get that offensive weapon now, or do they address another position?
I think running back could be in play here, but I actually want to get Tua some more weapons on the outside.
Okay.
Basically, Preston Williams coming off the ACL. There's still some question marks in that regard, in my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and take Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota here. Ooh. I think he fits he's a really, really good wide receiver who uses his speed extremely well in his route running. He's able to manipulate defenders and set them up with moves, and then allow his speed to do the rest. I really think he's a diamond that's just been hanging out in Minnesota. And I think the value here, I like the value here. So I'm going to go Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota.
Jason, you made a little bit of a noise there. What do you think here for Miami at 18?
So, I mean, Bateman almost profiles as a guy like a Justin Jefferson, where there's going to be guys taking over him, but you may look back on this draft and say that Rashad Bateman is the best out of all of them. And that, I mean, I know it's 1 year for me to say that about Justin Jefferson, but man, was he good last year. And I think that's what I mean more about, so many people were taking over Justin Jefferson that, we're going to look back on that draft and say, how on earth did you allow that to happen? And I think that Rashad Bateman kind of profiles as somebody like that who, when we look back, you're just going to say, man, you guys blew it. A lot of you guys blew it with your picks. You could have had this guy, and to have him in Miami, I think it's a great move, honestly, especially at this cost.
I believe this is the first playoff team on the board. They're going to be picking at 19, the Washington football team. The best team name in football, maybe? Yes, I would say. Jordan, who is the football team taking at 19?
Well, real quick, just to touch on that, I agree, and I floated this out there. I don't know how much traction it's going to get, but how great would it be if they just kept the football team name, but they threw like quotes on the outside, so it was like an Off-White like deal, you know, like it was like a Virgil Abloh collaboration, but it's just like the football team and quotes. You can't tell me that.
Come for the fantasy, come for the football analysis, but stay for the Virgil Abloh references that you never thought you were getting.
How much? Imagine the profit margins of jerseys that you can sell for $500, $600. Like you're going to be making 5 times what every other team is making. Like
all you have to do is put on the jersey. That's it. Yeah. Like, and then boom, and that's
it. Quotations on it, boom, magic. Like, hey, I'm not here in my pro day for ESPN, but if there's a football team out there that needs some marketing help, I'm a free agent.
As a marketing guy who coined the phrase "tits and kits," which was heard on NFL Network this week, want to throw that one out there.
Yeah.
I've thought about, because you know how when like you talk football or any sport with somebody who doesn't watch football and their go-to is hurdy dirty sports ball. Washington sports ball team. You know how much merch that would sell for people who don't watch sports? Oh my God, that's millions of dollars in just people who don't watch sports. The Washington sports ball team.
Now that you said that, all I can see right now is Rob Lowe wearing that NFL hat. That's it. Now that you said that, that's all I can see right now is just that. But let's get to the pick. Come on.
Let's get to the pick. Jordan, the Washington sports ball team on the clock at 19. Who are you taking?
Sports ball team is really good on the defensive line. Obviously, they have a great defensive line. Their secondary is very stout. I love the William Jackson signing. They have Landon Collins on the back end. They do need help at linebacker, in my opinion. So I'm taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame, and I would feel great about that pick. He's a guy that can be that traditional linebacker, but he has great speed, great size, could cover a player like a Darren Waller, like a Travis Kelce, some of these new hybrid wide receiver tight end guys in the slot. I'm very interested to see what Ron Rivera, a great defensive mind and a Cal Bear alum, could do with that just freak athlete and that special talent. And it really fills a need at the same time. And all of a sudden you're looking at that defense and it's looking really scary. And if they get a little bit of that Fitz magic going, I'm just saying that NFC East is wide open. That's a team to look out for.
I like it. I think that they're the best team right now in the NFC East. Even before the draft, I just think that they're loaded. They're ready to go, honestly. And if they get anything out of Fitzpatrick, like he said, they're ready to go. And if they nail this draft, man, this team's going to be scary.
Brad, I feel Saturday Night Live writing the jokes, definitely bringing back the classic 80 Bears skits. Bears. Especially, listen, the jokes SNL can write with the Andy Dalton era of the Chicago Bears, probably going to be fire come September. Who is the first pick in the Andy Dalton era for the Chicago Bears?
Well, we're going to go ahead and keep the same philosophy that we kept for Tua, and we're going to keep that same energy for Dalton. We got to make sure Dalton's got a fighting chance out here. So we're going to go ahead and get him some offensive lineman help. They're going to need it regardless of whoever the quarterback is. They just need some help on that O-line. Especially, they need to get Montgomery going. They need to get him going consistently. All fantasy heads know that. But in regards to having to help, again, along the philosophies of building along the offensive line and building outward, I'm going to go ahead and get a guy who I think is going to really fit that area of Chicago. And I'm going to go ahead and get Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. He's offensive tackle / guard. You could put him at right tackle or left tackle. You put him at guard. So he's kind of the opposite of what Darisaw is for me. Darisaw has the great speed, the footwork, and the technique, where Tevin Jenkins is a mauler. He is a big-time mauler, probably some of the strongest hands out of any of the offensive linemen in this class. You can argue he's up there with Penei Sewell in regards to power. Tevin Jenkins, I think, is a little bit slept on, but he is as advertised. So I'm going to go ahead and, it's a tough situation for the Bears right now. You could go, honestly, in multiple different routes. They need cornerback. They need all kinds of stuff. But, let's go ahead and get the offensive line right. Tevin Jenkins a pick for me.
All right, Jordan, you're in Indianapolis now. You're making the pick for the Colts. They like their offensive linemen. They made a push for Trent Williams. Do you see them going O-line, or do you think they address other positions here at 21?
I think they kind of have to. They're a pretty solid football team. But, losing Anthony Costanzo to retirement, it leaves a big hole on the left side. We saw what Carson Wentz looked like when the Eagles O-line fell apart, so you're going to want to put him in a position to succeed right away. So I would take Darisaw. Darisaw's still on the board, right?
Nope.
Darrisaw was taken 14 for Minnesota.
Well, I would get on the phone with Minnesota's GM and
looks like you got that number in your phone too. The way you're dressed.
I think you could go a lot of ways. I like Cosme out of Texas. I don't know if I'd feel great about taking him here. Man, that's tough. I would probably look to trade back, but if I couldn't, I'm kind of thinking about Barmore and Buckner together. I think that might be an intriguing duo on the inside. They do run 4 down linemen a lot. Barmore would be my pick then in this situation, just because I think that they would get that interior pressure they would be able to generate is going to automatically make the edge guys better. They don't have a pressing need there, but I do think that Barmore is very talented. He's a player that I do like a lot, and if the Niners weren't picking at 3, I probably would find some way to talk myself into them fitting him into their plans, but it's just not going to happen, obviously. So I'd take Barmore.
And I think the Colts are really in a position too. And I mean, I agree. I think they would trade back in this situation, but the Colts are also in a spot where they could probably take best available player. I mean, they're pretty set in a lot of places. So I like the pick, Jordan. Good pick. Let's go AFC South rival, the Tennessee Titans. They didn't go as deep into the playoffs as they would have liked. Brad, where do they go?
This one's a tough one because I think they could go multiple different routes. They lost 2 of their starting quarterbacks, or I think they cut Adoree Jackson. I can't even remember at this point, but they let 2 of their cornerbacks go. So that could be a big spot. But again, actually, I like the value here now. I like the value. I've been going back and forth with getting them a wide receiver to replace Corey Davis. Obviously, you're going to lose the production from Jonnu Smith as well. So there could be an opportunity here to maybe take a Rondell Moore or Elijah Moore here to kind of fit into one of those roles. But honestly, I think they have a nice, good young defense, and I'd want to kind of help replenish that. So I think right here, again, I'm concerned. I don't know how the NFL is viewing Farley. I just don't know how they're viewing it. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and go Greg Newsome right here at 22.
Okay.
Greg Newsome off the board at 22. Robert Saleh's second pick here at 23. Brad drafted them, Zach Wilson. Jordan, does Saleh get some defensive help, or do you see them maybe getting a weapon for Zach Wilson?
This is where I take Caleb Farley off the board, and I think that there are 2 teams that really can take a chance on Farley, and that is Jacksonville or that is the Jets. They both have that extra first-round pick this year. The only other team, it's too early, but the only other team that maybe if they felt great about it would be Denver, but I think not Denver, Detroit, because of all the future capital they have in the next few years. But I think if you have that extra first this year, you really can swing it on a guy like that, because if you do end up missing, hey, you have the other first. The upside was too good to pass up. So if I'm the Jets, I'm locking him in, and I'm Robert Saleh. If I'm Robert Saleh, I'm envisioning a scenario where, the D-line, the interior especially, the D-line's already looking pretty good. You can start to piece together that secondary. Marcus May is a phenomenal player. And all of a sudden you start to look at a vision where, hey, in the next year, maybe following season, you have Zach Wilson, you have Mike LaFleur handling the offense. Let me start building some of my guys on defense. And as Brad said, the back is really the only concern. If we're going purely based on skill, Farley's cornerback 1 for me by a substantial margin. Like, it's really not even close. His ability to close on the ball is better than anybody I think I've ever seen come out, where he gets beat. Like, you see him on the first few steps of a rep get beat, and you're like, oh, okay, this is 6, easy for the offense. And he closes in on these receivers in a way that I've Eric Crocker, who I respect the hell out of, and who anybody on 49ers Twitter is probably already familiar with, is one of the brightest voices for defensive back talk that I have ever, conversed with and had the pleasure of talking with. And he didn't compare him to this player directly, but when I asked him who the closing speed reminded him of, he said Deion Sanders. And that's not a comparison you throw around lightly. And then you factor in the fact that the guy's 6'2" with that kind of size. It's a home run pick, in my opinion, if it pans out. And if it doesn't, hey, you have all these picks because Seattle was a bunch of goofballs, and they offered you 15 picks for a defensive end that couldn't cover that you're playing at safety. So, what does it hurt to miss on that pick,
Yep.
Jason sounds to agree. He likes that pick. I was going to ask him, and he just said, "Yep." So.
No, I do honestly, because again, the back is the only thing, and it's Jordan's right about that. The back is the only thing that's a real concern, And again, you have to look at the teams that have that flexibility to take swings on that, and the Jets absolutely do, And again, if you hit on 23, everybody's going to say, "Man, you guys overblew the back thing," because it's true, about Caleb Farley, without that concern being the far and away cornerback one.
Brad, we're going to Pittsburgh. They started 13-0, 12-0, whatever they started.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great team.
Najee. Oh, I'm sorry.
Brad, 24. The Pittsburgh Steelers select.
I mean, Jordan already tipped my hand. How dare he? He already tweeted it before I could turn in the card. With this pick, I mean, Big Ben is loving life. How does Najee Harris fall this far? So I'm going to give Big Ben his Najee. And so you're going to get a big bruising back to go kind of play that smash mouth style of football that Pittsburgh Steelers love to do. And so you got to give Big Ben some relief in a certain sense of giving him the ability to hand off the ball and let the running back do some of the work. James Conner is no longer there. They have, Benny Snell, McFarland's, nothing that's really going to scare any opposing defenses. So I'm actually going Najee Harris right here.
Najee Harris to Pittsburgh. Jordan, you get the other team who had a quarterback selected early on. They get to get a second pick here in the first round. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 25. Who do they go?
Real quick, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I see a goat in the comments. Vish, I see you. I agree with you. I am 100% with you.
On our own show.
Answer, but it is what it is. But yeah,
the comments are always flaming us. This is our show. All right, go, Jordan.
Again, this is a pick where I think you get a little bit of luxury because you had the two first. You can kind of swing on a guy. So this one for me, there's going to be a little bit of inherent bias. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's a player I've been very high on for a very long time. I've made it no secret how much I like this player. But I also think with Urban Meyer and that spread offense that he's run and a lot of the schemes and the passing concepts he's going to run, getting a guy that can work the middle of the field out of the slot that's going to be a menace. And I'm not talking just good. I'm talking about a menace to defenses with the ball in his hands to pair with a guy like Laviska Shenault, who already is, and a DJ Chark. I'm taking Rondale Moore right here, and I'm feeling fantastic about it because I think that he is a player that of the landing spots that he could end up in outside of those Shanahan, McVay type offenses, an Urban Meyer offense would be right there at the top of the list for me. And as a place where he could really thrive, they could put him in the backfield. They could do all these motions and sweeps that are kind of taking over the NFL. They could have him line up just as a regular slot receiver. They could have him run back punts. I just see him in this role where they could have him do a lot of things, and he may not be a superstar player right off the bat, and that 5'7" height might ultimately hold him back. But he is just such a dynamic player, and I think he could do so well in an Urban Meyer offense that I would feel really good about this pick. And all of a sudden you're looking at an offense that Trevor Lawrence is coming into that actually has some bona fide weapons, and then you use that later capital to address the defense, which has some holes, but it really isn't terrible. I think that they still have a good young core to build around on that side of the ball, so I wouldn't force defense here. So I would take a little riskier, and I would take Rondale Moore.
Rondale Moore off the board to Jacksonville. We have 7 picks left. We're wrapping up here. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock. They made the playoffs last year for the first time in a very long time. A very good year for them. Brad, where do they go here at 26?
So the Browns have been doing a lot of work on that defense as recently of signing Jadeveon Clowney to go with Myles Garrett. They've also brought in Josh Johnson, Troy Hill with the secondary. So I'm going to go ahead and stick right there in the middle of that defense. And I'm going to grab a guy in the name of Zaven Collins. So we're going Zaven Collins. He's one of my favorite prospects in this class. 6'4", 260. Moves like a son of a gun.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to post those up there. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to distract you, Brad. I'm sorry.
I'm super distracted. Thank you. But he's just a guy that is extremely, extremely athletic for his size and build. Extremely rare movement skills for a guy with those measurables. I think he would fit right there in the middle of that Browns defense and kind of bring everything together.
All right. So the Browns go Zaven Collins. The final pick for the AFC North, 3 of the last 4 picks have gone there. Jordan, the Baltimore Ravens, where are they going?
I'm taking an edge defender, and I'm going to take a guy who I'll throw this out there. I like Jalen Phillips more. I think Jalen Phillips is the best edge player in the class. I'm just not like when you have to stop playing football because you've been concussed so many times. It's just a situation that I'd be very concerned as a team investing that much capital in that guy, and just as a human being, every time that guy goes head up with another offensive lineman, and you hear that kind of crack, like I wouldn't want to have to deal with the stress of that. So I think Jalen Phillips is more talented. I'm going to take a guy that I think is more raw, but has the potential to develop into a very good edge player. And it's going to be Jason Owe out of Penn State. That would be the guy that I would feel great about in this spot because I do think that they need some edge help with the players they've lost. Matthew Judon is no longer there. And I think that Owe gives them a guy that gets kind of written off as a speed rusher, but he is very powerful too as well. He's very strong, has very solid lower body movement. The thing that stands out is people say he didn't record a sack last year, but if you go through enough Penn State tape, you'll see that he was causing havoc left and right. And that's one of the reasons why I hate sacks as a stat or a reference to how good an edge player is, because it really is very dependent on the players around you. So if you generate that pressure and another player on your team eats up that sack, you're doing all the work and they're getting the credit for it. If you go back and you watch, he's been consistent with his pressures the last 2 seasons, and he's a player that I think with a little bit of seasoning could be a borderline Pro Bowl player for a long time in the NFL.
All right, so the Ravens get an edge rusher standing on a corner, Jameis Winston down in NOLA. Such a fine sight to see. The Saints, 28th pick, Jameis Winston, starting quarterback. Super Bowl sleepers, dare I say. How do they get a step closer to that Super Bowl title with Jameis Winston?
So, I mean, you set it up perfectly. I think the Saints need to give Jameis a couple more weapons. Obviously, with Michael Thomas being injured, and seeing who was left to pick up the slack. I mean, you have a young tight end in Troutman. You have Traquan Smith, who really hasn't taken advantage of the opportunities when given to him. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to add some more weapons to get Jameis some more opportunities. Now, there's a couple routes they could go, but I really like them staying home and taking Terrace Marshall out of LSU. And based on his profile, his size, dude's just smooth. He's a smooth criminal. He's out there. He's a little bit underrated playing behind Jamar Chase and playing in his shadow. I think Terrace Marshall really offers a lot of ability and could be a great complement across the field from Michael Thomas and be a great target for Jameis Winston to be able to work over the middle of the field and or go up the seam and let Jameis air that hoe out, as Croc would say.
Yes, he would. These comments are also electric right now. I'm not going to post them up because we're already running over time and everything right now. But
people like Jordan's look. Let's just
let's just say the comment section is littered with compliments for Jordan.
Yes, honestly, yes. I wouldn't want it any other way. Jordan, you get a fun job here at 29. How are you going to piss off Aaron Rodgers more?
I was just going to say I have the perfect pick to do it because it's actually is I think a very good pick and you would feel very good about it if you're just like objectively looking at it, but it's not going to be help for Aaron Rodgers. There's a guy that I'm realizing I let slip through the cracks that I probably could have taken earlier, but it works out even better because it's a great pick for the Packers, but it is not an offensive player. It's going to be my guy, one of my favorite players in the draft, Trayvon Marrig out of TCU, safety.
Yeah, you actually put me onto him, man. He's more like, he's more like that Jimmy Ward type where he can cover in the slot, and play safety and things like that, So you were actually the one, like I remember hopping on the StreamYard with you and you guys were watching. And I'm like, who the hell are we watching? And it was Trayvon Marrig. And honestly, I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is, So I mean, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. Tony, thank you for the donation, bro. We appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it.
We're getting through. We're almost done, guys.
We're almost there. 3 more picks. And Brad, who's going to help circle the wagons with the Buffalo Bills?
Had to just throw it in there. Had to.
So I think you could make a case for staying, on the defense. You can make a case to get a running back here because honestly, Singletary and some of the guys behind him haven't really done much to offer support to Josh Allen. but I think I want to stay on the defensive side. And based on the guy who's fallen, he's a high upside guy. I think he has the opportunity to be a toolsy guy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take Gregory Rousseau right here. I think he can play multiple spots on the defensive line. He can play edge. He can kick inside. He can be a guy who kind of move all over the place for them and develop into, maybe has a potential to develop into one of, the better defensive players in this class. But I think he is a raw prospect. So we'll see what happens.
Jordan, your last pick of the day, the Kansas City Chiefs here at 31. Where are you going?
This is going to be one where the rich are going to get richer. I'm going to go wide receiver here, and I'm taking Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss because I think that there is a pressing need for a guy who can consistently win out of the slot. I think the fact that they're moving Tyreek Hill kind of all over the place, him and Kelsey are obviously going to get the lion's share of targets, but losing Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman's a good player. I don't really think that he's – I think especially if you consider the fact that they took him ahead of DK and Terry McLaurin, it's even more egregious. Very fast, but I don't see him as a guy that's really going to work the middle, short, intermediate routes. So I'm taking Elijah Moore here, and I'm going to keep throwing weapons at Patrick Mahomes. I think that you could make the argument that you can invest in the line here. I'm just not really going to press that. I think that you could find a guy later. The only other guy that I would look at maybe is Radunz out of North Dakota State. I think maybe he would be somebody that I would consider if they feel good about slotting him in. But I think that the issues they had in the Super Bowl get overblown with how the offensive line played, because if you go back and you watch the Super Bowl against the Bucs, Mahomes was still getting the ball to his receivers. They were just dropping a lot of balls. And I hate to say it, Hardman was kind of the guy that kept standing out to me on tape. So if you have him as more of a specialist deep threat role, and then you have a hierarchy of, Kelsey, Hill, and then Moore, all of a sudden you're going to get back to the situation where it's really hard. Who are you going to cover? Where are you going to deploy your resources as a defense? So I just think that Patrick Mahomes is so good that he's one of those guys where you don't need to force offensive line picks because he's proven that he will get it done. And I think if I was Mahomes, I would rather have an extra weapon and kind of work my own ability to create plays out of the pocket if the offensive line isn't as good, because I think the benefit of having that wide receiver would be more substantial than taking a tackle here.
Perfect. And then, Brad, we are going to wrap up with you. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions. Well, where do they go?
I mean, they did a fantastic job of bringing most of their guys back. So there really isn't too many glaring holes for need. So they could really go best player available at this point. But I think one of the best players available actually slots into one of their available needs, which is interior defensive line. So I think there's a perfect opportunity here for them to stack and fill some holes while getting a really good player in Christian Barmore, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. He offers the first step quickness that you like to see out of those guys, can really create some havoc from the interior. So I think he is one of the better players available on the board, and you also fill a need at the same time.
Are you stealing him from Indianapolis? Is this like
did it again?
He did it again. I like the strategy still, though.
People play at Christmas where you steal presents from each other.
White elephant.
It's a white elephant draft.
It's a white elephant draft.
That's pretty fun, dude. I'm not going to ever struggles for viewership. They should consider that.
Oh my goodness. All right. So I'm on a roll. So let's see. How are we going to pivot off this real quick? So again, they have not many needs, so they can go. All right. I got one. So we're going to go Levy on Wuzuruki. I butchered the name. I'm sorry, Levy. Levi. I'm butchering your whole name. I apologize. But this guy, too, I think offers a lot of first step quickness that is very similar to what Christian Barmore has. And again, I think it just fits a need. I think I have them ranked somewhat similarly. Who turn on the tape and Levi's wrecking dudes. So I like the fit. Same logic applies with Barmore.
Perfect. Well, there is the first annual, we're going to call it that, mock draft here. Mock draft Monday on a Wednesday for the Sprint Right Option podcast. We could go through it. The important one right here, Justin Fields goes 2-3 for the 49ers. And before we wrap it up, I want to pose a question to all three of you. Last question, and then we'll go home. We'll call it a day. Nobody's talking about 43. Everybody, for good reason, the Niners have the third pick in the draft. Everybody wants to talk about that. In a perfect world, and I'm going to start with Jason, where do the Niners go at 43?
Oh, I'm going to say that's just to piss off Jordan, but running back. And I think it might be Javonte, honestly, at this point. Look, so I did it on purpose to piss off Jordan, but also here I do have a reason for it. So again, we talked about, everybody always thinks that it's undrafted free agents, right? And it's always, but that's not true. Kyle Shanahan has shown you that he's going to invest in running backs, and he will. So here's the reason that I think it's Javonte. He profiles like Nick Chubb for me, as far as the ball in his hands. And I've explained this on here. We're talking about a guy 15, 16 times could tote that thing where you don't have to really kill Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson or anything like that as well. I think, what he offers in the pass game is a little bit underrated as well, too. And, again, I understand Jordan's hesitation because 43, high pick, but I wouldn't discount it. And maybe there's a world where, they trade back and they get a running back, but I have a feeling that they're going to address the position because you can't just run into the season with Mostert and Wilson and Hasty, right? So, look at the track record of them drafting Tevin Coleman, of them going up for Joe Williams. So everybody always likes to think that it's undrafted free agents that they go for. It's just that they've been really lucky with them and they hit on them. So that doesn't mean that they won't invest in it. So that's where I'm leaning. I did it just to piss off Jordan, but I do have a little bit of logic, behind it as well too.
Jordan, who do the 49ers select in a perfect world at 43?
Well, first of all, how dare you, Jason? They could go a lot of different ways. I don't know if this counts. I hope it doesn't sound like a cop-out answer, but if it was me, I would try to move back and I would try to get back some capital next year because this is a very loaded part of the draft. But there is a guy that I'm very high on that if he's still there, I would take without hesitation, and that's Elijah Molden out of Washington. I think he's a guy who could come in and could fill this. I've done a couple mocks on 49ers Goldmine that have talked about positionless football and kind of having these guys that can play anywhere in the secondary. And he's the first guy I think of. He reminds me a lot of Jimmy Ward, who 49ers fans will remember. It seems like ancient history. It's been so long. When he got drafted in 2014, he came out and he was playing corner. He also was wearing a different number. It's just a very long time ago, I know. But I see a lot of Jimmy Ward in Elijah Molden. Jimmy Ward's 5'11", 190, and I think Elijah Molden's 5'10", 191. They both are very good tacklers in the open field too, which I think is a very underrated trait. We focus so much on their ability to cover that we forget ultimately a play isn't going to end until a player is tackled. And having 11 guys on defense who can do that consistently is always going to make a football team better. And I think it puts them in a position this year where K1 Williams is a fantastic player, but he's unfortunately been bit by the injury bug here and there. It's a part of playing the game of football. If he were to get hurt, I think that the drop-off from K1 to Elijah Molden would be substantially less than a depth piece that they may have in free agency or a veteran, whoever that may be now. And it also sets you up in a position where Jimmy Ward's pretty much locked in for the next couple of years, but Tart's deal is a one-year deal. I know that's Jason's guy, and I think that he is primed to have a fantastic season this year. And while in the present it would be a good thing, I see a scenario where he plays so well that he prices himself out of San Francisco's future. And maybe the Niners are looking at a situation where they'd rather have Molden play safety, and you have him and Ward. You're starting to run a bit more too high. You don't really need that kind of traditional mold that they've had the last couple of years. Or maybe it's K1 who plays really well. They have to decide. They pay Tart. K1 ends up walking, gets a big deal somewhere else, and then you just slot Molden right in there. So for me, it's Elijah Molden, defensive back out of Washington.
Perfect. And Brad, we're going to let you close this one out. Perfect world, 43 Niners select.
Perfect world, I'm with Jordan. We trade back maybe 8 to 10 spots, stack some additional picks in the top 100 because there's so much good talent here. Because I want to get one of these offensive linemen in the top 100. I don't know if I'm willing to go and take him right at 43. Obviously, Quinn Miners is a guy that, Jordan and I really, really like his ability and how he would fit with what we do at the 49ers. But I think you can actually get a little bit more value out of him by trading back and stacking a couple picks. So I'm not if it's 43 and we're sticking, I still don't know if I'm going to take Quinn there, even all my bias, with that baked in there. But a guy who's still on the board, like just based on the mock that we just did, and could have a potential to fall a little bit based on who's left. If Jason Owa is available at pick 43, I'd be extremely intrigued by that because he's a insanely toolsy guy. The traits are unbelievable. The measurables are unbelievable. He's a raw prospect. He definitely is raw. But you bring him in to put with Bosa, Ebukam, you get something out of D Ford, great. But you get a guy like Jason Owa in there to just kind of learn the ropes, and you bank on the upside. And you bank on his upside and see what you get out of him. And if he turns into be a world beater on the edge, you get insane value there at 43.
So there it is. If you want my opinion, it's ETN, just because I said him at 32 and I thought the Niners would win a Super Bowl and he'd be the like Edwards-Helaire pick, where it's like, okay, you just kind of take the best guy. And I think running back, any running back in Shanahan's system would be great. ETN would be my choice at 43 if he's still there. We're going to wrap it up because we've been here for an hour and 20 minutes, and I've loved this. This has been fun. It's always fun talking with Jordan and Brad. Go follow them. You see their ats on the screen for the audio listener. You can follow Jordan at @splash_cousin, and Brad is at the SF Niners. Jason, it's always fun talking to you as well. And as we like to do before we leave the podcast, Jason Aponte, as always.
Let's go Niners.
And remember, the San Francisco Giants are 8-4 and the New York Yankees are 5-7. We're going to close with that. Have a good night, everybody. Goodbye.